All right. Hello, hello. Welcome to Code Nation Fellowships lesson number 2 in unit 2 of the Rock, Paper, Scissors project. My name is Jessica, and I will be taking you through these slides today. So first and foremost, make sure that you submit your Do Now assignment to your respective program manager. It is in the slides. Let them know if you have any questions about that. And otherwise, we'll get started. So the objective for this lesson is that you will use Math.random, variables, and conditionals to generate, store, and display a random computer choice. You will also generate a random number using math functions. The vocabulary for this lesson is Math.random, excuse me, math functions, condition, conditional statements, if, else, and else if. So instead of a turn and talk, because this is a webinar, go ahead and pause and take a moment to think about this. Let's say if you're deciding who gets the last slice of pie, or you're deciding who goes first in a game, how are truly random choices made in everyday life? So take a moment to think about that. Hopefully you pause the video to think about it, but you may be familiar with like doing eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or maybe you've flipped a coin before. But those are both ways that in real life we kind of use like little games to make a random choice. But think about how you may do that on a computer, right? And that's what this lesson is about. It's about how to create a random choice on a computer. So in coding, we use something called Math.random in JavaScript. It is a function we can call to create a random number from 0 to 0.9999999 infinitely. So in code, you can assign Math.random to a variable. So for example, you might want to call the variable random number. You can set it equal to Math.random. And that will allow you to generate random numbers in your code. So the random numbers will be between 0 and 0.999. So they'll look something like this, right? It's like 0.2, 0.4, 0.6. And I'm gonna go ahead and open up Popcode and show you specifically how that'll work. So if you look at the console, and you type Math.random with parentheses and a semicolon, you'll see that a random decimal was generated. If I type it again, it's gonna be different. So this time I got 0, the first time I got 0.35, the second time I got 0.51. If I do it again, a different number is gonna pop up, and you get the point. It's random every time. One thing to note is that if I type math in lowercase, it's not going to work. It's going to say that math is not defined. Similarly, if I type random in uppercase, or if I do uppercase for both, it's going to come up with errors. So it's really important that you type math with an uppercase M and random with a lowercase r. So it is case sensitive. So just keep that in mind. It's easy to make a mistake that way, so always double check that. All right, so quick question for you to pause the video and think about. What are conditional statements and how are they used in programming? Hopefully you took a moment to think about it. So when you write code, you often want to perform different actions for different conditions. For example, if the password is correct, log in, computer, else return an error, right? So this is an example of how a conditional statement can be used in code. You type in your password all the time, I'm sure, on computers and on your phone. You can think, or you can imagine the code is actually running different condition statements to get you into your account. It's saying like, if your password is correct, let you in. If the password is incorrect, then stay out and return an error. So this is what the syntax looks like for how to write a conditional statement. So you start with if, and then you use parentheses, and whatever your condition is goes between the parentheses. Then you open curly brackets, and your code goes here for what you want to happen if that condition is met. And then else, oops, don't want to do that. So else is the other, like whatever you want to happen instead if the first condition isn't met. So for a true condition is going to execute the block of code in the if body. So for example, if 2 is greater than 1, the button will hide. So in this scenario, 2 is in fact greater than 1. So that is the code that is going to run. If 2 were not greater than 1, then this code would not run because the statement is not true. So similarly, a false condition is going to execute the block of code in the else body. So if 1 is greater than 2, which it isn't, right? So that's false. The else code is going to run. So instead, the button is going to show instead of hiding. So you might think to yourself, well, what if you have multiple conditions? Like, what if there aren't just 2 things that could happen? That's where else if statements come in. So else if statements allow us to use multiple conditions. So for example, if input equals rainy, alert an umbrella. Else if input equals snowy, alert a coat. And then else alert a smile. So in this situation, there are 3 different options, right? Rainy, snowy, or anything else. So else if was the way that you could add a second option here. And then the else is kind of like the catch-all for anything that doesn't meet snowy or rainy. So if it's neither rainy or snowy, it's like something else entirely, no matter what, the else code is what's going to run. So that's how you can write multiple conditions. Okay, so take a moment to pause the video again and think about this question. How might we use our knowledge of Math.random and conditional statements in our rock, paper, scissors game? So hopefully you paused and thought about that. But in your rock, paper, scissors game, think about how you probably talked in your program about this. And if not, you saw the previous lesson where the user is going to pick rock, paper, scissors, right? But the computer is going to generate a random choice. So you want the computer's choice to be random. So that would be an excellent place to use Math.random. Also, in order to determine the winner, you will want to use conditional statements, right? Because, for example, like if the user chooses rock and the computer randomly chooses scissors, then the user wins, right? You know that the user wins, but how is the computer going to know that the user wins? That's where conditional statements come in. So both will be used in your project to generate a random choice for the computer and also to determine the winner of the game. So before you continue working on your project, let's go to this popcode environment and do an example together. So, okay, so it looks like we have a magic 8-ball here with a button. And right now, when I click the button, it says Code Nation is cool. That's the one option that's there. But we're gonna go ahead and change that. So the first task is to create a variable called fortune that generates a random number. So I'm gonna remove this for now. And I'm gonna go ahead and create a variable called fortune that generates a random number. So the way I would do that is I would start with let fortune, that's what we're calling the variable, equal, I'm gonna set it equal to what we just learned, which is math.random. Again, remember math, the M in math has to be uppercase and the R in random has to be lowercase in order for it to work. So don't forget that, always double check that. Okay, so the first part is done, easy enough. Now the second part is create a conditional statement. If fortune is greater than 0.80, output nice try. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the syntax that we learned. So if, then you're gonna want parentheses and you're gonna want open and closing curly brackets. So let's start there. So if fortune is greater than 0.80, so you've already defined like what fortune contains in line 2. So you can actually just simply write if fortune is greater than 0.80, then you're gonna want it to say nice try, right? So I'm gonna paste what was here earlier, which is the text, which comes from up here, by the way, this text in the HTML. So text, codenation is cool. Instead of codenation is cool, I'm gonna just change that to nice try. Okay, then I'm gonna finish my statement. So the rest of it is else. And I'm gonna leave else blank for now. So else is going to catch whatever does not meet the previous statement. So if fortune is not greater than 0.80, that's when the else code is going to run. I'm gonna leave it blank for now and see what happens. So right now it just says codenation. If I click shake it fast, the random number was greater than 0.80, so it says nice try. Right now the else doesn't have anything in it, so this is actually never going to change no matter how many times I click it, just because we don't have any directions for what should happen if math.random is not, or if fortune is not greater than 0.80. So I'm going to add a condition in there. So I'm going to say, we'll keep the codenation is cool. So now if fortune is greater than 0.80, the text is going to say nice try. If it's not, then it's going to say codenation is cool. So let's try it. So I click it a bunch of times. Sometimes it says codenation is cool, and sometimes it says nice try. So you'll notice that it says codenation is cool most of the time. That's because I set the first condition pretty high. I said greater than 0.80, and you already know that math.random only goes up to like 0.99999. So most of the time it's gonna end up running codenation is cool. But if I change that, if I make it much lower, so let's do if fortune is greater than like 0.10, now it's gonna say nice try a lot more often, and you'll see. Yeah, so nice try is coming up a lot more. I'm clicking it a bunch of times and it's like mostly nice try. So you can see how you can like play around with math.random like that. Even though it generates a random number, depending on like what I set this condition to, I can make it so that like, so that one option pops up way more than the other one, right? In your project, you'll want to think about like how you want to play around with that to make the computer generate a random choice for rock, paper, or scissors. So yeah, that's it for the guided practice. For the independent practice, take a look at these instructions. If fortune is less than 0.8 and greater than 0.6, output sorry. If fortune is less than 0.6 and greater than 0.4, output better luck next time. If fortune is less than 0.40 and greater than 0.20, output definitely. And finally, create your own output when the fortune is less than 0.20. So sounds like you'll be using multiple conditions for that. So definitely pause and review the slides again. But definitely attempt that on your own. Let your program manager and volunteers know if you need any additional support with that. But that's pretty much it for the guided practice. Let's go back to the slides. So once you've completed the independent practice, which I highly recommend you do that before you go to your project just to get practice in, you'll want to continue working on your project. So take about 40 minutes. In this next phase of your project, you should create a random computer choice for rock, paper, or scissors. Sorry about that. So create a random choice for the computer of rock, paper, or scissors, and then allow your player to see the computer choice on the screen when the event is triggered. So you're gonna want to create a variable. You're gonna want to use Math.random to first generate like that random number, assign that random number to a choice. So it's a rock, paper, or scissors, and then allow the player to see that choice. So that choice needs to appear on the screen when the event is triggered, which is like the button that they're clicking, right? Use what you learned, use the guided practice, the independent practice to guide you. And if you get stuck, definitely check your reference table, use Google first, ask your peers. You know, like think about what you have in your toolkit before you ask others for help. But if you do end up doing all of those things and you still need help, then you can ask your teachers for help. So ask your volunteers, ask your program manager to help you out in that case. Otherwise, that's it. Yeah, hopefully this helped you understand Math.random better and helped you understand condition statements better. Again, definitely reach out to your team if you need additional help. But that's it. Thank you for being with me today, and good luck.